Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. Last month I did a video showing several pieces of survival gear that you should avoid. Some of them weren't too bad, there's just better options out there, while others are truly horrendous. But this month we're going to go the other direction and I'm going to show you the survival gear that I would depend on during an emergency. This will be done through the lens of the 10 C's of survival, which were made famous by Dave Canterbury. The idea here is that these are items that you definitely want to have during a survival situation, but they'd be difficult to make yourself or scavenge. So these are things that you want to have before something goes down and have them nearby at all times. And in no particular order, the first of the 10 C's that we'll talk about today is a container, which ideally would be a stainless steel water bottle like these. The reason why you want something stainless steel is that you can boil water directly inside of it. You also want to make sure that your container is single-walled because double insulated or double-walled bottles aren't safe to put over an open flame. The first one that I have here is a 27-ounce clean canteen, and this is what I keep with my EDC bag. It's nice because it meets all the criteria I just mentioned, but it doesn't look out of place. It looks like a water bottle that anyone would take to work or school. Then this next one is the bottle that came with my Pathfinder stainless steel bottle cook set. Aside from the bottle, the set also came with a stove, camping cup with lid, and several other items, all contained within a nice carrying bag. I really like that this is an all-in-one kit that has everything that I need to transport and treat water, and also cook small amounts of food. Since it's multifunctional and compact, this is what I keep in my bug-out bag. Then something like this Grail Ultra Press is a good complement to a stainless steel water bottle. This particular one is all plastic, so you can't boil water in it, but its filtering element can remove bacteria, viruses, and chemicals. However, Grail does make a purifier bottle with a titanium outer cup, which can be used over an open flame. Then the second of the 10 C's of survival that we'll talk about today is cover, and the main purpose of these items is to protect you from the elements. The first one that I like to keep with me at all times is this military style poncho. I keep it in the back section of my EDC bag, so it's always there if I'm somewhere and the bottom drops out. And aside from keeping the rain out, it also does a decent job blocking wind. It has grommets along its edges, which can be used to turn it into a field expedient shelter. And when combined with a poncho liner, it can also be used as a sleeping bag. Then another thing I like to keep in my EDC bag is an emergency bivvy. This would be useful if I get caught in a storm and I have to shelter in my vehicle. Now, that isn't too much of a concern here in Texas since we're just starting summer, but it could be a lifesaver in winter and it's so light, I just keep it in there all the time. Then getting into larger examples of cover, here I have a 2-person ultralight tent, and this is what I keep in my bug out bag. Even though it would be cramped, my wife and son are pretty small, so the three of us could make this work if we needed shelter while we're bugging out. It wouldn't be fun by any stretch of the imagination, but it would be a lot better than freezing to death. For wintertime, I also have a 20-degree sleeping bag. I like it since it only weighs 3 pounds and it can be squished down pretty small using its compression sack. The next of the 10 C's of survival, and possibly the most fun, is a cutting tool, and as you can see here, I have several of them. Of course, not all these go everywhere with me, but I have them all here so I can show you what I like to keep on me as part of my EDC, and what I like to keep in my most important survival kits. So first, I have a Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and a Victorinox Swiss Champ, and these are what I carry in my pocket every day. The Paramilitary 2 is my primary blade. I use it for general cutting tasks like opening boxes, but it's also well suited for a lot of survival related tasks. Its full flat grind leaf-shaped design makes it inherently useful for a lot of different things, including cutting cordage, food prep, and even carving. Its simple blade shape also makes it much easier to sharpen than something like a ZT350 that's more of a recurve. Then my Swiss Champ serves as my pocket tool set. A lot of people will try to use a dedicated folding knife like the Paramilitary 2 for prying or as a screwdriver, and then lo and behold, they end up breaking the tip off, and having something like this will help avoid that. Now, it is a little on the larger side and you can get something much smaller, but I kinda like having the kitchen sink with me. It has all sorts of screwdrivers, including different flatheads of different sizes, and inline Phillips. Then it has a wood saw and even a ballpoint pen, which you can see here. Now, you may have noticed that I also have a multi-tool here as well. This is the Victorinox Swiss Tool X, and I keep it in my EDC bag. I like having a full-size multi-tool in there so that first of all, I have a pair of pliers, but I also like having something a little beefier than my Swiss Army knife nearby. Since it's made by Victorinox, all the tools have a similar design, which makes it really easy to go from one to the other, and that's nice for me since I've been carrying Swiss Army knives since high school. Then another knife that I keep in my EDC bag is a Becker BK2. The spine on it's around 1/4 of an inch thick, so it's basically a sharpened pry bar. I chose it for my EDC bag since it's well suited for both urban and backcountry environments. Since it's built like a tank, it should hold up better to more abusive tasks that you may need to do in an urban environment, but it'll still get sharp enough to be useful for carving, and its thick size allows it to work really well for batoning. Then I keep a BK7 in my bug out bag. Its length makes it well suited for chopping tasks, but it's not so large that it's cumbersome if you need to carve or do other precision tasks. Now, I do plan on covering the kinds of blades preppers should have in greater detail on my other channel, DIY Prepper Reloaded, so be sure to subscribe over there if you haven't done so already. The next of the 10 C's we'll cover is combustion devices, and these are what you'll use to start fires. I always like to keep a ferro rod and a lighter in every single one of my kits. I keep this mid-size ferro rod and lighter in my EDC bag, and then this larger ferro rod and other lighter go in my bug out bag. Then I also have several other ferro rods. This is one that I keep in the center console of my truck, and then small ones like this are good for keeping in your wallet or purse. I mean, this one's a little on the larger side for that, but it can work. Then for home use, I prefer these long grill style lighters since they're easier to use if you're trying to light something like a camp stove or you need to burn the end of some paracord or a zip tie. Stormproof matches are also nice to have, but they won't last you nearly as long as a lighter or ferro rod will. They do, however, work really well for lighting solid fuel tablets since they get so hot it can burn for several seconds. I also like to keep some fire starters like these mini infernos or some homemade Vaseline and cotton balls in my kits as well. I used a cotton ball with Vaseline to help get our campfire at the Grand Canyon lit a couple of months ago. Then the next of the 10 C's is a candling device, which is just a fancy way of saying flashlight or headlamp. In general, flashlights are good for providing directional light, especially at longer distances, while headlamps are good if you need a hands-free lighting method. First, I have my EDC light, which is an Olight Warrior Mini 2. And y'all, I promise this is not an Olight commercial. They sent this to me, but it was nearly 3 years ago, so I'm not beholden to them in any way, shape, or form. I like that it's bright and can be operated by either the side switch here or the tail cap, and it also has several different brightness levels. I keep this little Stanley headlamp in my EDC bag, and it just runs on 3 AAA batteries. It doesn't throw light very far, but it does a pretty good job up close. Then I keep this rechargeable Energizer headlamp in my bug out bag, and its performance is similar to the Stanley's. If you could just have one light, however, I'd recommend something that can serve as both a headlamp and flashlight like this Parent 2. It's bright enough to serve as a standalone flashlight, but it can also be clipped onto a bag or web gear. I usually just use it as a headlamp though. This is what I use when I'm walking to and from a deer stand when it's dark, or if I'm at home and I need to check on something during a storm. For example, a few weeks ago our area had some pretty severe weather, and during breaks where things calmed down a little bit, I used this to see if anything had hit the house. The next of the 10 C's that we'll talk about today is cordage. The most common example of this would be regular paracord, and almost all of us probably have at least some of this stored away in our different kits. It can be used to help build shelters or other field expedient pieces of gear, or repair gear that we already have. Normal 550 paracord consists of an outer sheath with 7 main strands inside of it. You can use the paracord whole as is, or break it down into its smaller components if you don't need something quite that large. I've used regular paracord like this in my kits a lot over the years, but over the past year and a half, I've started to use survivor cord. Like 550 paracord, it still has 7 inner strands, but it also includes 25-pound monofilament fishing line, wax jute for fire starting, and 30 AWG metal wire. You can also get Survivor Cord XT, which replaces the metal wire and monofilament fishing line with the 110-pound Kevlar thread, 25-pound braided fishing line, and some additional strands. The Survivor cord XT is rated at over 1,000 pounds, while regular Survivor cord like this is rated at 620. I keep this small length of regular Survivor cord in my EDC bag, and I think it's really good in a kit like that since it gives you more functionality and options, but it doesn't take up any more space than the same length of regular paracord would. The only downside of the Survivor cord over regular paracord, other than the price, is that it's a little harder to tie into knots because of the extra strands inside. Then the next one, a canvas sail needle, may seem like a bit of an oddball, but it really goes hand in hand with the paracord we just discussed. If something like your EDC bag gets damaged, being able to repair it could be the difference between keeping all of your gear with you or having to leave some of it behind. And a large, beefy sewing needle could help you make those repairs. For thread, you could remove the outer sheath from your paracord and use one of the smaller strands inside. I keep this canvas needle in my EDC bag wrapped in duct tape. That makes it easier to find and helps it stay in the pocket organizer I store it in, and it also reduces the chance that I'll poke myself with it as I'm rummaging around the bag. I haven't needed to use this particular one yet, but a few years back I had to repair an old canvas butt pack and a holster, and having a needle like this was very helpful. You may also want to keep a metal thimble close to it since that'll help you move it through thicker fabric. The next of the 10 C's of survival is another thing that you can use to make repairs, and that's cargo tape, also known as duct tape. Now, chances are you don't have enough room to hold an entire roll of duct tape in your EDC bag or even your bug out bag. So what I like to do is cut a pencil to the width of my tape and wrap several feet around that. Doing this will give you quite a bit of tape in a package that's still small enough to fit in almost any kit that you have. For micro kits, you can wrap duct tape around an old credit card like this so that you have it in a more flat package. Now, when selecting duct tape, avoid getting the cheapest roll that you can find. Cheap duct tape tends to be pretty thin, so it won't be as strong and durable as other options. A lot of preppers use Gorilla Tape in their kits and they seem pretty happy with it. After that, the next of the 10 C's is a compass. This is one that I've kept in my EDC bag for several years. It's pretty basic, but it's held up very well. I think I got it around 20 years ago. I recently picked up this one, which I think is the same model, just 20 years later for my bug out bag. Now, if you want something a little nicer, then you can get a compass like the Suunto MC2. It's a mirror compass with adjustable declination, so it gives you a lot more options than something simple like what I have. It's also a little lighter than the Caminga lensatic compass that the military uses. Now, if you want something smaller, you could always get a button compass like the Suunto Clipper. Just don't cheap out with these because button compasses are notorious for being junky and inaccurate. This is from the same company that makes the much nicer MC2 I just mentioned, so it should at the very least point north, which this one does. Then the last of the 10 C's that we'll talk about today is a cotton bandana. I always like to keep at least one or maybe even two in my EDC bag since they have so many uses. Most of the time I just use it to clean stuff up, but they're good for lots of different things. They can be used as a pre-filter for something like a grill purifier bottle, as a bandage, a pot holder, and bright ones like this can even be used as an emergency signal. But of course, these aren't the only items that can be used for survival purposes. So if you want to see a list of everyday items with survival uses, then click here. Or if you want to see some of my favorite survival hacks using stuff you probably have laying around the house, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.